Hello and welcome to Lauren Libby Live. I'm John Fugler from Studio One at TWR, along with TWR President Lauren Libby. And a good day to you, Lauren.
Well, good day to you, John. And we're going to talk about a number of things in the world of TWR today. And thank you for joining us today. We're going to try to keep this as close as possible to about 15 to 20 minutes. And we hope to be able to update you on some things that are going on that are very dramatic around the world.
Well, I'm excited because this time you brought some pictures, some videos, so our viewers can see where you've been. It's been a busy few weeks for you.
Well, it has been, and I have to tell you that in terms of show and tell, a picture's always worth 1,000 words. And so if you see these pictures, let me just tell you, these came from my iPhone. And we take pictures and video, and we just want to expose you to what's going on in the TWR world. And to be honest with you, for most of us, it's really hard to even keep up with what's going on because there's so many moving parts right now in the ministry.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's get right into those. I think you went to different. It's hard to keep track of where you were, so and you probably had a hard time with the time zones, too.
Well, that's true. I mean, the first stop was in Europe at our partners conference in Bratislava, Slovakia, and what a great time. We had over 20 countries, 26 countries represented in Europe and in Central Asia, came together and to talk about how in the world do we proclaim Christ to the world by mass media so that lasting fruit is produced.
Great. And seeing people and interacting with them face to face and hearing those stories, that's got to be something that inspires you as you go out and meet with the folks in the field.
Well, it really is. I mean, when you stop and think about where some of these people minister, particularly in Central Asia, and they're dealing with the secret police all the time. They're dealing with other issues in those countries. And then you realize that they're ministering to people on radio stations that are 200,000 watts. It's nothing short of miraculous to think about our staff in those countries. And I have to tell you, I am always impressed when I'm with them because they take it takes tremendous courage to be able to minister in those countries.
Well, take us on the tour with some of the video and pictures that you have.
Okay. Well, let's bring up the first video here. And I was from Europe. I went to Latin America, to Ascension, Paraguay, and you're watching what was going on as they were celebrating their 30th anniversary. What an absolute phenomenal time of celebrating an anniversary. Do you know how that ministry started, by the way?
No.
A German man flew into Ascension, Paraguay, rented an airplane, landed in a field, got out of the airplane, went up to a house, and said, "I'm here to start a radio ministry. Would you like to help me start a radio ministry?" Now, 30 years later, you look at it and you see what in the world has gone on. But here was a guy who flew in from Germany, rented an airplane, landed in a field, and by faith, as God's brought a tremendous ministry all across that country in Paraguay.
Wow, just responding to the Lord, walking by faith and stepping out. That's amazing.
Well, that was a great story. But when you hear what God is doing all across Latin America, it's incredible. And I have to tell you, I was so impressed with our people because they are not only thinking strategy and reaching people, but they're also figuring out how to finance that within each country. And in mission circles, those of you that know missions, that's always the $24,000 question is how in the world do you fund a mission within a country? And I was so impressed to listen for one day on how they're working in those countries to get people to be involved in not only consuming the ministry, but also helping support it.
I think we're seeing a real turn in that. I feel like we're having some momentum going, and you expressed when you came back from that trip how inspired you were about that.
Yeah, because Latin America has a lot of challenges these days. Do you have the picture of our Venezuelan brothers? Venezuela is going through some tremendous times. Nope, not that one. There we go. Our Venezuelan brothers. Gabriel is the man on the left with the RTM shirt on. Next to him is the chairman of the board of Venezuela. And those gentlemen in the middle are from Brazil. And Brazil is involved with the people in Venezuela. And I am amazed at how they're ministering in the context of one of the hardest cultures in the world in Venezuela right now. They take a little cartoon puppet character around the country, and they literally entertain kids about Jesus and tell people about Jesus all across that country, and crowds show up because there's not a lot of entertainment and there's not a lot of hope, there's not a lot of encouragement, particularly in Venezuela. But I am absolutely amazed at how they take this youth ministry all across the country. And to be bluntly honest with you, they operate with power outages. We finally got a generator to be able to take care of the power outages. Our staff travel from great distances to produce programs, and I am amazed at what's going on in the country of Venezuela. You know, it is true that when people are under persecution, the Holy Spirit moves in lives, and we're seeing that in Venezuela, and what a great ministry right now in Latin America. While we're on the subject, in Brazil, I'm also amazed what's going on in Brazil because they're very interested in the northern part of Brazil in the unreached people groups up in that northern part. And they're taking real steps to produce programming to go in there and putting up FM stations so that people can listen to on the air and be encouraged in their relationship with Jesus Christ. And you look at what's going on in Latin America, and I just have to tell you, I am so encouraged. Came back and thought, you know, if you really want to see the mission of TWR and see it multiplying far beyond just an American organization, then Latin America is a place to go do that.
So I heard some prayer points in there for our viewers to be praying for Venezuela especially and the hardship there and how difficult it is to do ministry. Pray for our missionaries to be encouraged. And then for fruit to continue to grow throughout Latin America. That's a great story from Brazil.
Well, let me tell you of one other example in Mexico. For years in Mexico, we've tried to have a ministry presence, and several things have broken open. We have another partner. We have two partners, ministry partners, in Mexico, and one of them is setting up AM radio stations across the country. And we just got the ability to broadcast from a 150,000 watt AM station in Monterrey. And I have to tell you, that is a great encouragement. And in the southern part of the United States, you can even hear it in Spanish because that is a huge radio station.
Well, God's opening up things that so unexpected, which is what he does for us, that's encouraging. And continue to pray for the Lord to open doors and for us to be sensitive when he does open the doors to walk through them and really see God work.
Well, from there, we went to Asia. And our Asia Partners Conference, this is, and he leads the work in Southern Asia. And so our Asian brothers were all together to talk about the ministry and where they're headed. And when you listen to what's going on in countries like Bangladesh, like Pakistan, like India, in that part of the world, it is incredible what God is doing, again, in the midst of great persecution.
Yeah, and as you were there and you had a chance to talk to our missionaries, staff, the nationals, what was the spirit that you detected there? Well,
it was not a spirit of defeat. It was a spirit of we're moving forward, and we're moving forward in faith. And I have to tell you, I'm so impressed with what God's doing. There's a concept called Radial Homes. And it's all across South Asia. It actually got started in India, and we have almost 6,000 of them in India. And what they are is little group gatherings of about 18 to 25 people in a home, and they gather around an audio player and a radio, and they listen to programming, and then they discuss it. And it's almost like a house church. And there are over 6,000 of them, and there are about 800 being formed every year in India. Now that's spread into countries next to India. And that concept is something that really puts boots on the ground in terms of ministry, not only with mass media, but also ministering directly to people.
Creative ministry going on.
It really is.
Now, I want to go back to that one slide that we showed earlier that we pulled off because you got a story to tell about this.
I do. Those two brothers, these two brothers are from Papua New Guinea. Now, they are unique brothers, brothers in the Lord. They're not physical brothers. But I have to tell you, when you sit and listen to them, what they've done in terms of putting FM radio stations on in New Guinea, not only that, but they're getting ready to put on a big AM radio station in New Guinea, and it's all done from within the country. They have received some help from a radio station down in Georgia. And these brothers, when we were updating the Bonaire ministry, gave the first gift of $3,000 US from Papua New Guinea to help get the station on Bonaire started, because they said, we want to minister from one island people to another island people. And now you look at them and you see what God's doing through them, and it's absolutely incredible. We tend to think of New Guinea as sort of, the jungles and everything. It is incredible what these brothers are doing there in Papua New Guinea, and they're brand new partners with TWR.
That's great. And excellent stories. This is good. We're going to have a story from our Oasis transmitter. I'm going to give people an update on that. I got some really good news. But before we do that, first I got to ask, any other photos from your trip, or did we cover that?
Well, let's see. Let's check. Is there anything else we have to show here? It's show and tell time. Yes, this is a picture of the Paraguayan board when we were celebrating their anniversary down there. What a great group of people. I am telling you, these folks would be number one, Class A people. You could put them anywhere in the world, and for a board of directors, they are absolutely incredible. And that's why we have a strong ministry in Paraguay, is because of the leadership of that unique board of directors.
Well, let me ask you, we've been going out to different parts of the world, seeing what God is doing, and that's exciting. But maybe kind of reel it in a little bit and center in on some of the ministry emphasis areas of TWR, just so our viewers get a chance to see what are the lanes that we're running down. Well,
one of the lanes we're running down is ministry into the Muslim areas of the world. We call it the M areas. And we're producing programming. Not only that, but we've brought on new broadcast sites that cover that part of the world. A new 200,000-watt transmitter in Central Asia. We have a 1 million-watt transmitter that covers the entire Middle East at night. And so the Muslim world, not only in the Middle East and not only in North Africa, but also in Indonesia, and that 1040 window that goes all around the world, we're centered on that. We're centered on unreached people groups. And, we could sit here and tell you stories for the next 20 hours about the unreached people groups. For instance, in Suriname, reaching new tribes out in the country of Suriname, but that's for another time. Another thing we're doing is we're looking for digital delivery. How do we develop brand new digital delivery vehicles? And God's been very gracious. We have TWR 360. If you haven't downloaded that on your cell phone, let me encourage you to do that. And you can listen to programming in about 80 languages, 81 languages now. And we're looking to intensify and to increase that platform digitally around the world, which really supplements when we cross-promote between our broadcasts and our digital platforms. We're also recruiting staff. If you're ever considered working in missions, we have something for you. We literally do. And we're praying for brand new staff. We're looking for about 25 people to join TWR in the next several years. In the pipeline, right now, we have 14 couples that are raising personal support. Engineers, we have contractors, we have program people. If you have a skill, we can probably use it in TWR, and so that's one of our priorities is recruiting staff. Not only recruiting staff to be with us, but also leaders and the development of young leaders in the work. And it's interesting. We took about a 3-year time period and worked with 35 of our younger leaders, and it is fun to see them begin to move into major leadership responsibilities. For instance, Aaron Tan just took over in Northeast Asia, and he was one of those young leaders being developed. If you don't do that, you're a one-string guitar and you're a one-generation ministry.
I had to smile when you talked about recruiting, and there's a place for you at TWR. I think it was about a year and a half ago. You sat across the table from me and my wife and issued that challenge, and look, here we are today.
Well, if you're listening today and you've been praying about it and maybe God's touching you, we'd love to talk to you. Just give us a call or get in touch with us on the internet.
Oasis, the Oasis Transmitter. I just got back from West Africa on the site, seeing the tower, seeing the transmitter, the first test broadcast going out while I was there. What a moving experience as I look back on that now. The Lord has done so many good things over the last couple of years to bring this to fruition, and we are very close. Our viewers have been following this story for quite a while right now. Bring us up to date, Lauren, on that.
Well, we've been praying about it. The last piece just fell into place. We needed several generators to arrive. We need about 2 megawatts of power to be able to drive the transmitters and the whole transmitter site. And those generators just arrived on site last week, and they're being installed. And we're looking forward to signing on the Oasis transmitter. Like I said, you were there when we were doing test broadcasts with the engineers, and this will cover out into Nigeria and the surrounding countries, particularly the English-speaking countries and several tribal languages. Our existing 100,000-watt transmitter will be beamed west, and that will go into French-speaking Africa. So from a resource standpoint, this is probably one of the largest broadcast outlets in the name of Jesus in West Africa right now.
And what struck me as I was there is the significance of Nigeria, 7th largest country in the world,
That's right.
200 million people. And it's such a volatile area in some parts of that country. And here we have a chance through this transmitter, through this radio station, to reach the entire country for Jesus.
Well, particularly in northeastern Nigeria, the Fulani tribesmen and Boko Haram are basically, well, they're terrorists, basically, is what it boils down to. And they're burning churches, and they're finding believers and persecuting them. And that's one of the reasons we decided to put this transmitter on the air, because we want to be able to change that environment, particularly in northeastern Nigeria.
I want to thank our viewers who have contributed over the last year and help us to cross the finish line on our fiscal year end with a great victory. God used you to provide, and we are rejoicing that we met the goals that we had set out. And that's really, Lauren, springboarding us to the calendar year end that is coming in December.
Well, you'd like to be able to sit and say, oh, that's really great. But, we're coming up on the end of the year, on December the 31st. And as we're looking out into next year, the things that God's leading us to do, we need to finish the year very strongly financially. And so you're going to be hearing about a year-end challenge. You'll hear about it on the internet. You'll hear about it through the mail. And be praying about that, because a number of people and our board of directors are in the process of giving a matching grant right now, even as we speak, to be able to match dollar for dollar what you give. So think about that, be praying about it, and when you get it, could I ask you to really think about giving generously and how the Lord would lead you to give, because this enables us to springboard into the next year of ministry.
Yeah, and see what God has ahead.
That's right.
So thank you for being a part of that. You are indeed partners with us. We couldn't do it without you. Let's close with a story. I mean, you've been out in the field in the last few weeks. Just tell us something here.
Can I tell this story? Let me start in Imperial, Nebraska.
Okay.
Now, how many of you have ever heard of Imperial, Nebraska? It's in the southwestern part of Nebraska. We were with a family that is one of the largest producers of popcorn in the United States and the world. And I happen to have known this family for a number of years, and we were staying with them. And they're now starting to raise popcorn in Central Asia. Now, we just signed on a radio station there called the Silk Road Transmitter. And we began to talk to them about this, and they got very excited. And my friend Dennis was going over to spend time, and he just spent time with our staff about a week and a half ago. And it was amazing to see what God's doing. Here's a popcorn farmer in Nebraska that raises popcorn, caught a vision for reaching that part of the world, and we're beginning to co-partner with him in that process. And I remember talking to him, and he said, here I am. He said, I always wanted to be in missions. And, I took over a popcorn farm, and we got really, really big, and he said we had a large family. He said it was wonderful, but I always had this little nagging thing about missions. And here he is, raising popcorn, and he helping establish a work there, and working with TWR in terms of how in the world can we influence that part of the world, which is a very spiritually hard part of the world, and how can we do that, and how can we do it effectively? And, God can use you. When you stop and think about it, if he uses a popcorn farmer from Nebraska, you just think about how God can use you.
That's kind of mind-boggling when I think
it really
about
is.
That.
It's amazing. And Dennis and Zoe, God bless you.
Oh, and thank you. Thank you for joining us during this time together. I look forward to our next update as we get closer to the end of the year. God is at work, as you heard, in amazing ways. Continue to pray, continue to give generously. We sure appreciate it. And we'll catch you on our next Lauren Libby Live.
Thank you, and God bless you.